There is a lot of, unfortunately, fear-based marketing around coding and programming.
From a generational perspective, I think I am in one generation and they are in another generation.
If we are talking about the source code, I feel a child is naturally curious. Much more than all of us.
Struggle even to get started, but once they get into it, they accelerate very quickly.
So I said the very purpose of asking you the question is to get you to think and not to give you the answer.
Now science being a mainstream subject, unfortunately the spirit of science is gone. Luckily for swimming, people still enter the pool.
I would have seen the body moving like a feather. I would have seen expressions on the face. Good afternoon. We are the ones keeping you away from your lunch. But I would say that I am expecting an extremely provocative discussion now, because I have with me two very courageous thinkers, very passionate about what they do and extraordinarily passionate about taking it to learners. It's also interesting because from a generational perspective, I think I am in one generation and they are in another generation. And invariably, you realize that as learners, you gain a lot from learning from the younger generation, as we saw from the earlier sessions as well. So I have asked them in my mock session, I have asked them to be completely politically incorrect and, throw difficult questions. So to start off, I would just say that I met Dr. Pankaj, about a month and a half ago for the first time. And at that time, as we were parting and as we had had a discussion and he had shown me a few interesting questions, he took me to the bathroom, opened the tap of water and asked me, why is the water stream diameter higher at the top and lower at the bottom? Being a physics enthusiast myself, I realized that at that moment I did not have a credible answer. And true to form, Pankaj left me hanging when I asked him, okay, what is the answer? So he said, the very purpose of asking you the question is to get you to think and not to give you the answer. And so he left me there. And between there and my ride to the airport in 45 minutes that I had from our place of meeting, the one thing that I chose not to do is look up Google and, think about the question. And I did figure out the answers. Not only did I figure out the answer to that question, I also figured out a whole range of other questions that rose, some of which I could figure out answers and some of which I could not figure out answers. So that is there. And then I don't think we did an introduction on the, did we do an introduction on both of you? It was a brief one. But Neil actually is somebody that I met in the mock session for the first time. And she actually thinks at an extraordinary level in terms of when we talk of digitacy and when we talk of technology, I think you will hear things that are completely different from your understanding of what you think is technology and what you think is digitacy. So I'm looking forward to this discussion. The way that we have formatted, we are going to try and shave off about 15 minutes so that you can go to lunch a little earlier. But each of them will just talk about what they do, ask questions, and probably get you to think a little bit. And then I will, of course, the space that I inhabit is that of language, linguistics, and learning. And so we will have a conversation around that. So each of us will spend about 3 minutes presenting that. This is not a moderated session. This is actually, I'm just taking the lead here. But then we will probably ask a few questions to each other. And hopefully we will give you a chance to ask questions to each of us. Yeah. Over to you, Pankaj.
Right. Thank you, Vish, and just wonderful to be here. Actually, we have been told that our session time is less, but I guess it's okay in a way because Nandita did a good amount of work that we were supposed to do and what we were discussing yesterday. And I guess she has already left us all open with a lot of questions and lot of points to ponder upon. So I was thinking about this source code thing, and when you shared, we had a discussion that should we just limit this discussion to foundational literacy and digitacy and numeracy and all, which is what we generally talk about FLNs. FLNs are important at the younger age. But is that really the source code? Like I come from seed to sapling. We were very, very careful when we named it seed to sapling, which means seed has a potential, and which is what I guess you meant when you thought of this name, or whoever thought of this name, source code. So the code is there.
Yes.
Code is here.
Code is already there.
We want foundational literacy numeracy, and this is the code. And we are trying to give this. Take this, you learn this thing also, and you learn numbers also, you learn alphabets, you learn how to write, how to read, how to calculate, and how to, but what about this code? We forget the code there, right? I kept talking about my daughter because probably that is one of the only person I have to experiment upon in a very radical manner. And obviously we work with schools, but the thing is, now if we are talking about the source code, I feel a child is naturally curious, much, much more than all of us. And we are now talking about the next generation, by the way. So these two generations sitting together for the next generation. A child is a lot more creative. And what we do, because we want to teach them something, or because we want to develop them, we want to make them ready for something, NEP says making them ready, or because we want them to be prepared for something, something. What about something that the code has already, the seed has it in itself? Are we giving them that opportunity? And again, I mean, there is some sort of arrogancy when I say that, are we giving them opportunity, which is meaning that I am slightly on the higher pedestal, so as to give them the opportunity. So I'll still take that arrogance, that may be still okay, but at least better than giving them something directly. So if we can just think of giving them an opportunity which the child already has, or why just a child, like why should not myself? I also have something, right? I am just trying to figure out my interest till now. I've changed so many careers till now. I mean, although it is mostly in research, but there are different fields. So why can't we just now see what potential we have, or what is something which is our calling, and then you don't really look as a job or a livelihood or something, right? Because we are always, I mean, I've been like fed up with these discussions that we have to prepare them for livelihood, or they should be prepared for the future jobs and all. But why should they not be prepared to pursue what they like? So automatically they will take care of itself, right? Do we have to go there? Now just quickly also sharing this, the subject processes, because that is something, let's stick to foundational numeracy. I told you yesterday, can we just come out of this, but you told, okay, fine. So let's stick to numeracies, all these things. Now what do we mean? I guess she will probably tell a bit more about it. So what I did was, I gave my daughter, who is 4.5, just a few weeks back, this small simple thing. Okay, some pieces are gone, but anyways.
Can I request the second camera person?
This is a magnetic thing, so I can do this for this particular thing, right? So now, I gave her this, and I just asked her to play. Now, Neeldhara was playing there, and she came up with a lot of interesting designs here, right? I guess probably it is some diya or something, right? Okay, so she was playing. So this was probably much more opportunity given to them. Then I gave her the other opportunity. Now can you come up with something? Okay, I guess this is the direction.
Yeah.
So you take only 12 square pieces, and you come up with different shapes of rectangles. So one was 12 into 1. The other were these kind of shapes. Now she made it. She made this, she made this, she made this. And then she was wondering that, are these two are looking similar? Just see this computational thinking that we are talking of. These two are looking similar. I asked her, why do you say so? Because it appears to me similar. Like, can you tell me why it is similar? Think further. And I thought she will count that this is 3 and this is 4, so and this is also 3 and this is also 4. She just turned it after some half a minute or 1 minute. See, now this looks like this and this looks, she kept playing. Now I did not tell her anything. Initially with open challenge, she came up with lot of things. With a more focused challenge, she came up with these patterns. Now let me do one quick thing with you. I told you that I will be giving you a challenge. So I give her 2 triangles. Can you come up with a bigger triangle? Quick. Okay. That's a simple thing, right?
Exactly the sort of thing.
Now can you make a bigger triangle quickly?
You may have to hold it up for the sake of the...
Quickly is a problem. Is that a triangle?
Just look carefully. See what we are trying to do. Is there a pattern there? What you just did in the previous thing and in this one, is there a pattern? Try to figure out that pattern. There is an algorithm to it. You may like to be called it as algorithm. Quick thing now, very quick. Same algorithm or different?
All right, probably the same.
Why?
I'm not sure, but...
What algorithm?
Is your mic on?
Okay, sorry, is my mic on? But I'm not sure if what you want is repeating the same pattern at large.
What pattern we were doing?
Finding an edge along which you could extend that triangle, I guess.
So now she is trying to find out a pattern there that, okay. So basically we are just, do it quickly. Anyways, I'll not tell the answer, but.
Acha, quickly and all ka pata nahi, but I'm like terrible at doing things quickly. Okay, so this is going to complete it to a square, which would not be quite right. Let's see. Okay, sorry, I should probably hold it up. Okay, so let's see the challenge. Okay, just for everybody's benefit and to buy myself some time. The challenge was to combine 2 triangles into a bigger one, so I think I managed that quite well. And then we brought in this piece here to extend this triangle to a bigger one.
Anybody seeing any pattern, please raise your hand and please.
Yeah, so it seems like you have the bigger base and the smaller edges, and this guy goes and attaches itself to one of the smaller sides. I'm not sure if it would work if we did something like that or something like, okay, sorry, I keep.
Yeah.
All right.
What is the pattern?
That does look like a triangle.
Symmetry?
Symmetries.
Fibonacci. Is there Fibonacci here?
No.
Anyways,
Maybe.
no Fibonacci here. So basically just 2 small triangle and 1 big triangle. Every time there are 2 smaller triangles. So now if we can make them come up with this pattern. Now I have a magical piece of paper here. Just look at this. So what is happening?
Do it again. Yeah.
I was doing something else and it just happened and the child saw, oh, some magic happened, and then, oh, this is a very interesting thing. What do we do now? Why did this happen? I am creating a vacuum. Any other reason quickly? Okay, you know it. You can give slide. Okay, so if she is saying you are creating a vacuum, now can you design a simple thing? So let's do it without this kind of thing. For the child, when they say you are creating a vacuum, okay, now or whatever, you are pulling it. So what do you do? What simple experiment? They come up to you, stop your hand. Then they say, no, probably it is because of the fan. Okay, so they only come up with the experiment now. This is all like age 5 and 6. Okay, they came up with experiment, simple experiment design using some simple phenomena. You will come up with experiments for your tap or for any other observation, I guess. It can go on and on and on. But now I'll just conclude at this. I have this piece of paper over here. I was doing this. This you can try. If I pull it from both the sides, what happens? How many pieces do I get? 3, 2, 3. How many? How many 2s? How many 3s? Will it be always 2? What do we do to make it 3? And why it is only 2 or why it is 3? So anyways, now we did not give them answers. for many of these things. You can keep them into explorations. Okay, so now just making one final point. Now, I will still take that risk. Can we now go instead of FLNs, if we can make it more like foundational curiosity skills or creativity skills or even social skills, environmental skills. Now these are something which we are looking at now NEP when it talks about competencies, and this is something we are like seriously working right now for the upcoming NCF, because these words, literacy or numeracy or science and math, and these have very, unfortunately actually, I know and you know probably, and probably she will give that example of cycle or swimming we can give. Now these words unfortunately have meant something else. Now science being a mainstream subject, unfortunately the spirit of science is gone. Luckily for swimming, people still enter the pool, or for cycling, people still use cycle, otherwise it will be just teaching swimming sitting over here, that these are the concepts of buoyancy. There's no point of doing swimming sitting here, right? Similarly, science and math and literacy, like you were saying yesterday, there's some other broader meaning to it, but unfortunately for whatever reasons we understand these words in a very different way now. So how do we go about it? So I just leave you both and the audience with that challenge, and yeah, sorry.
So yeah, no, I think that's a fascinating start to the conversation about just picking up from where you left off. I think when we talk about digital literacy, this is a phrase that probably means different things to different people, and at least it's not obvious to me what we are talking about when we are talking about something as broad as digital literacy. So I actually was wondering if I could spend my 3 minutes getting your inputs on what you think counts for digital literacy, and just to make this logistically feasible, hopefully if we can switch this out to a slide, and if you could all please use your phones to go to menti.com, and could we have that slide please, where we will have your responses show up on the screen. So if you could go to menti.com and enter this code here, and whatever you write on your phones will start showing up here, and we could use that as prompts to take this conversation forward. But just to get things started, let me say that perhaps a lot of teaching, there is a lot of, unfortunately, fear-based marketing around coding and programming, and people are often made to feel that if their kids don't learn how to code by the time they're in, I don't know, some 4th or 5th standard, then they're not going to make it by 2040 or whatever it is that we are targeting. They're not going to survive. And I personally feel that this is a very unfortunate sort of an approach, and often even when you look at the pedagogy of how programming is taught, a lot of the time you are learning the syntax and you're learning how to put things together, which is a lot like learning how to play music by understanding notation and identifying, where the keys are. So if you, okay, so I'm actually not a music person, so forgive me if I'm getting this wrong, but I do imagine that if somebody knows how to read, let's say, sheet music, you wouldn't equate that to an actual understanding of music, right? Because that's not quite the same thing. So for sure, if you're, maybe you can develop your skills to a point where if somebody gives you a sheet of music, you can play it off on whatever instrument you have. But does that leave you with the ability to, for example, feel the music? Does it leave you with the ability to create your own music, which is an important, end game that you might have in mind? So all of that is kind of, it slips through the cracks and is lost in the process. It's very similar with programming. So I've volunteered for CS Pathshala, which is an organization which takes up a lot of initiative to try and influence how computer science is taught in schools, and to bring in what they call computational thinking, which is again a term that's not very well defined, means different things to different people, but the idea is to step back a little bit from the nitty-gritties of just, writing code and achieving very specific outcomes, to really stepping back and learning how to think, just like, we were discussing now, how do you think about a problem and how do you approach it? After that, when the time comes to, actually code it up, most kids will pick that up from, like you were saying, on YouTube. People know how to do that part of it. So that's kind of the easy part. It's about, how you think about a problem and how you approach it. And again, I think the less we say, the better. The more we let people explore. I completely agree that that's kind of an appropriate approach. And different people are going to take different amounts of time. Unfortunately, we don't know a practical way of allowing people to take their time. I really wish that, unfortunately, like, because we are standing between you and lunch, I had to finish these triangles quickly. But ideally, I mean, I'd like to be left alone to brood and take my time. I think exams are so artificial, and I think it just creates a lot of needless pressure and stress, and I'm sure you all relate to this much more than, I can even imagine. But as a kid, I think I was never good at doing things quickly, and so this whole construct of having to finish things in a time-bound fashion did not make sense. So, we're talking about the cycling example. If, your kid is learning how to cycle, you don't tell them that if you cannot do it in, a week or a month, then, we're going to give you a fail grade and that is that. It does not make sense. You try to learn something until you get good at it. The kids who are picking up guitar from YouTube, different kids are going to pick it up at different rates, and maybe some people are good in the beginning, but then they plateau off. Maybe some people struggle even to get started, but once they get into it, they accelerate very quickly. And we brought this up earlier today, that different people obviously have, everybody's brains is wired differently, everyone has different rates of absorption, styles of learning, and so on. So I'm actually a big believer in technology, because I think it has the potential to bring this kind of personalized education in the hands of people. Look at how many people are teaching how to play a guitar. They obviously have different approaches to it, so the chances that a child finds an approach that resonates with them is much higher than what we can do in a classroom, where we unfortunately, again, practical considerations force us to use a uniform approach in front of 40 people. But when those 40 kids go out and everyone has their favorite guitar instructor on YouTube, right, then that kind of eases off, that makes the learning process more sort of optimal. So I want to sort of look at what we have here. Okay, I can also see it there, but my eyesight's not the best, but yes, okay. Yeah, all right, yeah, a little bit easier, yes. All right, so the ability to use machines to solve problems, which is a very interesting way of putting it. Yes, so it's the need of the hour for sure. Yes, learning in the virtual world. When I can finally count using my fingers, that's very interesting. I don't know if anyone's tried this exercise of, how far can you count with your fingers? So of course, we probably start off with counting up to 10. But again, if you leave this open-ended sort of a question, can you count more things with your fingers? And then, people start realizing that maybe they can code different things by, saying that, okay, if you fold your fingers, it means something. And, people discover things like binary notation on their own without your, even having to bring up any of that stupid terminology, right? And it's amazing that people, and when you discover something on your own, it gives you a sense of confidence that is really unparalleled. I mean, it doesn't come when people tell you this stuff. So I also discovered the sort of 4 times 3 is 3 times 4, but that was because my mom made me write a chart with, all the multiplication tables, and it was stuck on my cupboard, probably for easy revision. And I noticed all these coincidences in the chart, I was like, okay, there's a 12 here and there's a 12 here, and let's see if this, again, pattern is there elsewhere too. And then, okay, so now you conjecture that maybe it is true that A times B is B times A, and then you start thinking about, okay, is that really true? It's always true on my cupboard. Is it always true in general? And why is it true? And so on. So I think it's great to discover things that way. And of course, moms being moms, she sort of said, okay, my kid's a mathematician. I mean, she extrapolated very quickly. I think that was probably, not entirely a little premature, but I think once you start getting interested in that sense, you're kind of, that's the job half done, I think. All right, the ability to be able to do this, which is, okay, that's a creative way of putting it. To be virtually smart, one can access and use digital technology for one's benefits, digital interfaces to make sense of coding and other digital language to get work done efficiently. The ability to communicate using a phone to send a voice message without having to type a response, for example, differentiating with 0 and 1. The ability to use algorithms, to use technology, algorithms and programs to find answers. So absolutely, I think all of these are, I think, excellent perspectives on what it means to be digitally literate. But also one aspect that I wanted to bring in very quickly is that, well, I mean, you can do the coding, you can learn how to use the interfaces, and you can do all of that. But if you don't have a holistic approach which combines this with issues that are societal issues or human issues, and we've talked about this quite a bit, then it's sort of an incomplete education. For example, Apple recently introduced what they call AirTags, which are little devices that are meant to help you find your keys. You know, you attach an AirTag to your keychain, and if you lose your keychain, then you can sort of ping the AirTag from your phone, and so it makes a sound and you can find it, right? And there are many devices of this sort. And what started happening was that people started using AirTags maliciously. So, somebody can slip an AirTag in my purse, and they can actually track my location, because that's what Apple designed its technology to do. You can track your AirTag from your phone. So it's somebody else's AirTag in my purse, and now they're doing a lot of damage control by trying to figure out how people can be warned about AirTags that are not familiar to them, and so on and so forth. But the reason they got into this mess in the first place is clearly because the engineers who made this device did not have the imagination to think about all the potential repercussions. Okay, and somebody actually commented on Twitter saying that this is what happens when engineers don't get a liberal arts education. I mean, this is so it's you really don't think about, I mean, this is a very concrete example, but you can imagine this playing out in various sort of contexts. So thank you very much for participating and sharing your thoughts. And yeah, I mean, we can take this forward however you like.
Yeah. So I'd like to actually, from a language perspective, and because of the fact that in our earlier conversation, we had said that the labels of literacy, numeracy, and digitacy over a period of time have evolved, and it is very likely that just like we saw the definitions of digital literacy, that if I ask you what is literacy and numeracy, I may get some very diverse answers from all of us. So this assumption that when we have a title like foundational literacy, numeracy, and digitacy, that we all have the same understanding can often be very flawed. I'm going to actually do something a little different for you, and this is related to language. I'm going to ask, and this is very important for the experience to be of value to you, I'm going to ask each and every one of you to please close your eyes. The experience will not be good if you do not close your eyes. Please close your eyes. Imagine the power goes out. All the lights go out together, and the heavy darkness envelops you. There is a sharp quietness in the air, and you blink as your eyes adjust to the sudden dark. Your parents call out to you from another room. You get up and begin to walk slowly, taking small, careful steps. Your arms are outstretched, and you maneuver your way by feeling the walls. You stumble a little over a small piece of furniture. You are finally in the living room where your family has assembled. You hear a sharp crack, and a small glow fills the room. Your mother has lit a candle. Please continue to keep your eyes closed. I want you to now imagine where you are, what your experience has been, recollect it, revisualize it. We are going to continue the experience. Imagine the glowing candle in front of you. The candle is tall and sits atop an ancient brass candle holder. The wick of the candle is ablaze with a long quivering flame that dances playfully. You peer at the teardrop-shaped flame, enchanted by the shades of color. The tip of the flame is light yellow, shedding a golden glow around it. The middle of the flame is bright orange, the color of the sky lit by a setting sun. The wick is burned black at the bottom, surrounded by a dazzling blue radiance. The heat of the flame melts the candle gradually, causing the molten wax to trickle down the sides. You stare at the soothing flame for a long time and slowly fall asleep. Once again, I'd like you to recollect the visualization and the verbalization of this experience. Please open your eyes. Can I have the slide up, please? I'd like you to just silently read it. We can have the next slide. Okay, go to the next slide. Yeah, I would like you to now silently read this and experience it. So if I were a child, this very act of, if I'm able to read, I would have seen the body moving like a feather. I would have seen expressions on the face. I would have seen a whole lot of experiences actually happening through this very simple description. Simple question is, would a first standard or a second standard child be able to relate to this experience? Yes or no? Yeah. No, you are free to disagree with it, but you look at the quality of the language, the kind of metaphorical usages, the idiomatic usages, the vocabulary that is in use, the kind of syntax that is in use, and you are engaging in this piece of communication with the child. The child is fully getting the communication, the child is enjoying the experience, but nowhere is it about teaching language. It is simply about looking at the fact that the fundamental idea of language, not simply as a means of communication, but as a means of creative thinking, imagination, deep comprehension. The idea that language is not, goes well beyond what we call functional literacy into academic literacy is something that we need to look at very carefully. Because when we look at foundational learning, and if you look at language as one of the primary pillars of foundational learning, we need to aspire much higher than what we are aspiring for right now, because the child is capable of that aspiration. The simple point is this, that not everything that you saw on the slide there is something that the child immediately relates to, and it is not at all important from a foundational learning perspective. What is important is that you provide experiences and exposure without necessarily having expectations. And you will find that many of these experiences do not have short-term outcomes, but very often they are very long-term outcomes. So this morning when we were listening to Nandita Das speaking about her childhood, at that time, could you actually see the outcome of what those experiences were? You would not be able to see it. So as educators, the moment we look at foundational literacy and numeracy and digitacy as something with a certain set of goals that are to be achieved in the short term, invariably you rob the child of a much bigger possibility. So one of the fundamental things that I say is, the only teacher in the school who is doing nothing to improve your language is the language teacher. Because she is the only person trying to teach. Everybody else simply wants to communicate and get their point. So a maths teacher who's teaching just wants to communicate his understanding or her understanding to the student. Every other teacher is simply has that unconditional motivation of the fact that what I say you must understand, what I know when I convert it into words, I want you to be able to access that. The English teacher unfortunately thinks that the child must learn vocabulary, the child must learn grammar, the child must learn all of these things. The moment you make instruction your primary objective, you are actually impairing the learning of language, which is one of the reasons why we say that if you want somebody to learn language very efficiently, never teach a single word, never teach a single meaning, never teach a single rule of grammar. Let the child enjoy the experiences of language and see what happens. And that is really where I'm going to stop here, because at a foundational level, NEP has given us this opportunity of thinking about the 5 foundational years as a single block, not as 5 separate years. So when we provide those experiences and the diversity of learners, the diversity of learning capacities that exist there, the whole idea is you provide the entire buffet. You're going to have the buffet very shortly now. Which way the child wants to enjoy the buffet, whether I go to the ice cream first or whether I go to the soup first or the salad first or the main course first, that is not your business. You do not linearize something, because NEP has again given you an amazing opportunity to non-linearize your teaching, take out gradation from your teaching. And specifically, it has talked to you about this idea of multilingualism in a very substantial manner, where if I have the ability to deal with the syntax of 3 or 4 different languages, how many intelligences have actually been nurtured in the process? They are not limited to language at all. They actually extend themselves into sciences, they extend themselves into numeracy, they extend themselves into a whole lot of other intelligences. None of the intelligences, and this is one of the points that we were talking about, actually are compartmentalized the way that we compartmentalize it. And so at the foundational learning level, once again, you have to completely be multidisciplinary all the time. The moment you are kind of thinking of breaking that down into disciplines, that is when Anandita Das starts hating mathematics. Because of the fact that you start somewhere and you want to take your own path, but you have never provided the opportunity for the child to figure out his or her own path to the destination. Eventually, if you just give all of these experiences, and as both Dr. Pankaj and Neel were talking, they don't distinguish between the humanities and the sciences. It is a very, very artificial construct. It's a very unfortunate construct, and I think that that is something that we need to get out of at the foundational level, at least, if not continue that journey later. Because in fact, today, many of the scientists are actually the ones who are leading the humanities revolution also. Because at some level, you make the crossover. I've seen the crossover from science to humanities happen a little more often than the crossover from humanities to sciences, because somewhere or the other we have placed sciences as at a pedestal that is substantially more difficult or more inaccessible, and which is not at all the case. So we are now at 1:51. I'll stop here. Instead of us asking questions to each other, I think that we should give the audience to, this time we'll take exactly about 9 minutes so that we are go to lunch at 2. Any questions or even comments from the audience? Please keep it short so that as many people can ask questions.
Can I ask a question to the audience before that?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yes.
So I am part of this curriculum pedagogy group for the NCF. Now one of the let's not go to the recommendation. You told that we need to let the child till foundational years learn things seamlessly. So how many of you, I guess most of you are school leadership team, management or principals or somebody, directors or something, right? Now if I just tell you today that till class 5, Let's get rid of all the subjects, not till class 2, which is foundational.
Yeah.
Now I'm coming to the preparatory stage. Till class 5, no subjects, no EVS, no science, no social sciences, no math, no English, no Hindi, XYZ language, nothing. Just one book. How many of you feel okay that is possible? And how many of you feel it is not possible? We need to give them some subjects. So no subjects. So just one teacher can, or maybe multiple teachers using something. So that is possible. Okay, wow. Because we had like lot of discussions whether we should do it or not do it. And finally we are doing it with no subjects. But see, finally the school principals should adopt it, right? Or the school teacher should adopt it. The society, the parents should adopt it.
Yeah.
Otherwise it just remains in a policy, unfortunately.
Please use the mic. Please use the mic since it's also live streaming and there are a
If
lot
this
of people.
question would have come to me 5 years back before NEP 2020 came, I think even I would have told that it is not possible. But NEP is giving us a choice. So looking at the curriculum that the NEP is coming up, I feel that this is possible. Therefore, I'm sure that we all of us agree on the same lines. NEP is giving us a choice.
Great.
Okay, I would like to say something.
1 minute. Let the mic come to you before you.
I have the mic with me.
Yeah, you are.
Revati
Yes,
here.
whoever has the mic. Yes.
Okay, I don't have textbooks till grade 5
Lovely.
in school at all. And we do not have formal examinations either. And we don't have compartmentalizations of subjects
Lovely.
for
Very
the
good.
past 15 years.
I'll be very honest, as she said that after studying NEP, nobody can study it fully. I'm actually admitting it. Whatever we could study, we are being a little cautious. So up to 2nd standard, we have done away with it. But 3rd, 4th, 5th, we are still trying. We are seeing what is the outcome up to 2nd standard, and then we will move on.
I have some more
But we
difficult
have
questions to ask you.
one book which has everything, and which is a book come answer book come everything, and it's one teacher who's teaching,
Chalta.
so it's possible.
Possible. So one more question then, like in a question paper of class 10, I'm not now talking till class 5, because till class 5 and till class 8 schools are generally okay. Till class 10, because that is also part of the source code, right? I mean, even I am part of the source code, even you are part of the source, you also have some code in you,
Yes.
right? So why only till class 2? A question in the class 10 board examination, that you are sitting in this room, which I have asked couple of you. Now you write down whatever observations you have or whatever questions come to your mind. This is a question in class 10 board examination. You are okay with that? Board examination. So there is no answer key obviously, because the teacher can't have an answer key.
The context needs to be set.
Huh.
See, it's a beautiful question, by the way, but the context needs to be set, and the information as to what you seek to derive from that particular answer needs to be made clear. It can be different sets of purposes, but if that is made clear to a child as he moves on to class 10, then it's a wonderful question. So now I'm posing a question. See, the Pankaj Jain is the answer. What is the question?
Exactly. In fact,
Can
this
you
is there in our
can you
position
frame
paper.
multiple questions
around this.
to give the answer, Pankaj Jain?
So I can give lot of questions now for this answer, and to probably you will be happy about it. It doesn't go as Pankaj Jain in the position paper, but it goes as some other thing, and it's there. Can we have these kind of things? Now this is not just open-ended, but now we are giving them chance to think divergently. There is no mistake or something like that. See, many people say that we should be okay with mistakes. Why should we just be okay with mistakes? We should rather celebrate it, because that gives us so much opportunity to learn. Why should we be just okay with mistakes? I mean, it's great that you tried, you made mistakes. Like, not just be okay, it's okay to go wrong. No, it's great you went wrong. What did you learn from it? So, do you see the difference now? So, yeah.
Mike,
Right.
please. Is there anybody else who wants to comment or ask a question? Yeah. Please wait for the mic. Yeah, sorry.
Though again, being honest, that it would be a very bold step to have this kind of question paper. We can have this kind of question paper, but the responses that we get to assess that, to the assessor you need to have a key, and the assessor should be able to find a way out of it.
See, now she is being honest here. Like everybody is probably trying to please that. Maybe should we take one more question?
Yeah, we'll
or
take
we-
it.
Actually, I want to just add to what Dr. Bhavani Shankar spoke over here. Very rightly, the context has to be created by us, the educators. There is so much to learn in the world that if you just leave a child, it's quite nice. It sounds very good, idealistic when you say that you don't have a question paper and stuff like that. But in the long run, when we look at Piaget's theory of cognitive development, we want every child, what we teach is for the child to create certain schemas and schematas in the mind where he can learn and, okay, this is where this goes. Okay, amphibians go here. These are the exceptions to the rule. So for us, to make sense of the world, for the child, that's our responsibility as educators. So no textbook, great. But in the long run, what is the context in which the child is going to learn and where is he going to apply what he learns? That broad structure needs to be provided by the educators and by the curriculum.
So
If you're getting
have,
my point,
I have a very simple
right.
point here is that I'm using the example of what was written out there. It does not take away the responsibility from the educator and the designers of instruction or teaching from actually imagining it at a much deeper level. For the learner, you are not actually putting conditions on the learner, but you are not taking away the responsibility from the educator. So the quality of the writing, who writes this? How well do you write it? How are you actually enabling the visualization through the way the text is written? Because, for example, we would go and talk to schools and say, yeah, we also have storytellers, we also have writers, we also do this. Do you actually, do you have the discriminatory capacity to say how many layers this can actually be deepened? Can you actually have a paragraph that is so illustrative in so many different ways that my learning out of that one line or out of those 2 lines or out of those 3 lines, right now tell me, have you ever imagined the hue of a flame with that much discrimination and clarity? You would not have. You started enjoying the flame because it's an experience that you have had all the time. You have been watching, little flames every day, diya jalate hain, dekhte hain. But how much do you provoke the thought process behind it? Those are the intelligences that are being nurtured here. It is not the experience is not some kind of a standalone thing. So at the end of the day, as educators who are sitting here and pretending that, I'm being provocative, pretending that we know what the world in 2040 is going to be, we really don't know. We don't even know what it is going to be 5 years from now. We have put a very nice title out there. It's very interesting. It's very challenging. But the fact of the matter is, so what can I do? I can only create the best possible experiences. There is a very large amount of skill, talent, capability, thought, discussion that needs to go into the creation of those experiences. And so if I take 1 minute of the child, how much have I given to the child because I have taken away that 1 minute from that childhood? What have I given back becomes a very important element. What comes out, you don't worry about that element. That part of it basically, trust the child, trust the source code. The source code has the ability to unravel all of these issues, whether it is in the science domain or maths domain or linguistic domain. That element of what you have seen a child do, you have seen your child sit up, walk, learn a language, understand syntax, absorb vocabulary without you teaching a single word. That is a very, very outstanding accomplishment. And suddenly when we come to organized teaching, we kind of presume that the child has just lost all those abilities. If you imagine the act of walking, it is an extraordinarily complex task. It is not a simple task. Your child figures it out. If you imagine the aspect of, let us say, a child riding a bicycle and taking a turn at high speed, the angle of inclination is being, figured out without the physics lesson of ki coefficient of friction kya hai, what is the velocity? None of these things are coming into the picture, but the fact of the matter is that the child is accomplishing an extraordinarily complex task without instruction, but simply because of the fact that you provided the right environment, you provided the right questions, you provided the right challenges, and once again, as echoing what Pankaj said, accept every answer. And at some point of time, if you think that the fundamental source code does not have the intelligence to figure out what is right in the context, and that is the trust that you need to have, and that's the courage also that we need to have as educators, saying that I am seeing a whole lot of intelligence. I am going to trust that intelligence, and I am going to provide this. This is not an easy task, okay? All of you raised your hands.
To test that courage, I was trying to provoke with some of the very extreme kind of cases that can we provoke them to this extent enough. Like yesterday I was in a class with class 1, this is class 1, gave them magnets to just play. 2 small ring magnets to play. And these are like very cheap quality, intentionally given very cheap quality, 2 rupees magnet. And many of their magnets broke. Now these kids, my magnet broke, they tried to join it back, and like, I'm not able to join it back. But then I gave the other magnet, and it's like, oh, this magnet is joining back perfectly. This is not joining back. Now if I ask you, you will start playing with this for next half an hour, I'll challenge you. You will not try easy to figure out this simple thing. You know all the magnetism, pole, south pole, north pole, everything. This magnet, it joins, it doesn't join in this magnet, see? What is happening? If you connect this way, but this is not the perfect way to connect this magnet. Now what is happening? So now, unless you challenge them, and now NEP talks about competencies. Everywhere assessments of competencies. Unless we are ready for these assessments of competencies, I know ma'am that this is, and you are Fadke ma'am, and one of my favorite sir, all time, my lifetime favorite sir is Fadke sir from Ruya College. Okay, I don't know if you know him. So, oh wow, wow, then we must catch up during lunch. So now, he never taught us. During his farewell, I told, sir, you never taught us anything. For 3 years you were taking BSc, you did not teach us, but you provoked us, you triggered us so much that became our lifelong learning. Okay, so now this kind of questions I intentionally provoke, but this is something, the questions that we are looking for to have it in our board examination, in our entrance examination. Now that is the reason why I was intentionally provoking you, because unless we are okay with these kind of assessments, we will not be able to do much in the curriculum, in the pedagogy aspect, or in the classroom. Nothing is going to happen, because finally the assessment needs to be changed. Otherwise you will say that, see, we are trying to make them think, but in the examination define Newton's laws of motion. Write down all the 3 laws, and each word should be there, because if that one word is missing, so half mark cut, 1 mark cut. What are we talking about?
Yeah. So in the interest of time.
I'll just add on, I wish this is directed to you. See, one is trying to understand why you do what you do.
Yeah.
So therefore, see, my belief is that there needs to be a framework that forms the basis for any kind of leading exercises. Otherwise, see, you can still do it, but you need to go from the top down, from the answers to the questions, and still figure it out. So whichever way, you need that framework to refer to the context in which it is set. I'm curious to, this is a beautiful example, but you already have explained why you sought to do this exercise.
Yeah.
So once we explain why we do what we do,
Yeah.
so it makes it a lot easier to set the context.
No, I have to explain it to you only because you are adults. I am not going to have any explanation as far as the child is. For the child, I am happy with just having provided an experience that the child is able to relate to. So our idea with this panel was not to find answers. Our idea was simply to leave you confused.
With questions.
Leave you challenged. Provoke you, because for the next, during lunchtime, you may probably miss the tasty food because you're thinking, if you're thinking about this, then we have done our job.
And do think
please
about
do
the
enjoy the
tap
lunch.
problem every time you open the tap next time.
Please do think
Just
about it.
observe
Can I-
carefully.
Can I just, one question. So that was again to you, Vish, that as a musician,
Yeah.
a person who sells flute on the street,
Yeah.
do you buy the flute because the way he plays the flute,
Yeah.
or are his selling capacity is very good? There were questions being raised about people being given occupation, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He never went to a music school.
Yeah.
is written music better, or by hearing what the person has learned?
Yeah.
Or a fruit seller who's selling vegetables and singing on the sides. He never learned. So what, in terms of learning, the questions that we've been raising is that learning, does it happen in a classroom? Is written music better because it's more systematic, or is the hearing kind of learning that is there? Or eventually, if the purpose is to sell the flute, does the person need management training to sell, or does the flute playing have to be good, or is understanding of the song that is there? Do we have answers for such things in terms of what is the quality
we can
and
at least,
sellability
I can at least
of
provoke
things?
more questions, if
Yes,
not answers.
that's the question.
See, there is no such thing as written music. There is no experience of music on paper. The experience of music is entirely through the ear, and nowhere in the world is there any pedagogy that starts music learning on the basis of what is written. It is a misunderstanding sometimes that you must learn to read music, and this is only in the Western sphere. In the Indian sphere, there is the whole concept of writing music is a more recent phenomenon. It has never existed, when we learned. You listen and you learn, you experience it. Regarding the experience, example of the flute player, this is something that once again is very critical, is that our intuitive intelligence, which comes from the older brain, because of lack of time I did not go into it, is something that is extraordinarily advanced, and which is how you kind of moved into the logical brain, which is the more recent brain. Unfortunately, you cannot pick the pieces of the intuitive brain and say that how do I reconstruct it. I can only tell you, get on the cycle, don't worry, you will not fall down, and your intuitive intelligence will kick in and do something that is an extraordinarily complex task. This organized education basically does not do anything unless it understands how X becomes Y. You must go back to less Eurocentric thought processes, come more to some thought processes that we have had. So when we look at yoga or when you look at Ayurveda, you only know cause and effect. You really do not know how the cause results in an effect, and it is okay not to know that. The important thing for you to do is that I have done it this way and it seems to be producing a lot of results. Just accept the result as it is without necessarily having to know which are the steps that you took. So you are trying to unravel the steps of that one flute player. How did he become a flute player? Just enjoy the music that the flute player plays and leave the rest to, nature to take care of things. This, once again, is not easy. It requires a lot of courage. It requires the ability to seriously internalize that it is very, very, very okay to fail multiple times. It is very, very, very okay to not find the answer for a long time, because all our answers need not come tomorrow, but our answers will come at some point of time.
Vish, I disagree with you. It is not okay. You should celebrate because you tried so many times.
Sorry, my mistake.
It is such an appreciation, right? You tried so many times. That's why you failed so many times.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, that's such a quality to celebrate, right? That you are willing to fail, so many times.
Yeah.
So that's the quality that we're looking to celebrate. Neeldhara, any last words, because you have been very silent. Sorry.
Can I sneak in a 30-second anecdote here?
Yeah.
Since we are talking about questions and failures and so on, I thought even reframing what is right and wrong is also sometimes important. So there was a question, it was a math question. It was supposed to be, can you compare two numbers and which is bigger? So two calculations, it said you have X chocolates and Y chocolates, so how many will you take? So 20 and 25, let's say. And the kid did the calculation correctly, but she picked 20 chocolates. And of course, she got 0 marks for it, and her mom was scandalized. You haven't figured out comparison. But the kid says that, I know 20 is less than 25, but 20 chocolates are enough for me. That is why I answered 20. Because the question was, how many chocolates are you going to pick? Which bundle are you going to pick? And I thought that was fair. So sometimes it's not even a mistake.
Yeah.
Sometimes what we think is a failure is not even a failure. And even things that might be mistakes, I completely agree that they should be celebrated. So on that note,
we will thank you very much for being patient, audience. Thank you very much.
Thank
Both
you.
of
Thank you
I
for
think
this.
It's been a very engaging, thought-provoking conversation.
Thank you everyone for this kind of interaction. We will carry it forward.
It's been an absolute privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our heartfelt thanks to the panel for giving us so much food for thought before lunch. I'm sorry, I had to make that joke. Also for leaving us with more questions and encouraging us to celebrate those questions and the trial. May I now request Asha ma'am to please join Vish on stage to felicitate Dr. Misra and Dr. Jain.